My name is Brian Watkins, and this is the second Excel project tutorial. Hopefully you have downloaded your sample test. As always, I give you the test, and our test for today is the fixed principal payment loan schedule. It's a 30-minute test, and I'm going to introduce a few new Excel skills this time. Bear in mind that your first two Excel tests are pretty easy compared to the future Excel tests, because I'm trying to leave some room in your schedule to kind of catch up on our pivot tables, which we'll talk about later. Okay, to open the spreadsheet, go to your Excel, open a new spreadsheet, and give it a name right away. So we're going to go File, Save As, and use your desktop. Most of the time you'll be in the testing center doing this. Use the desktop so you can find it quicker. And we'll say Accounting 231 Excel. Well, let's just call it the fixed principal payment loan schedule. Okay, you of course will call this Accounting 231 your last name and test 2, so I can tell it apart, but I'll give it the full name. Alright, this is going to be a portrait mode project, so we're going to take columns A through G, click and drag, right click, column width, make this a 12. As I did the first time, let me move my recorder down. Over here in the lower right, I'm going to zoom the screen. You don't need to do this, I'm just doing this to make it easier for you to see my work. Okay, let's restore the video. Okay, first thing we do is a title, and the title is bold and underlined. The shortcuts are Control U, Control B, and this is the fixed principal payment loan schedule. Okay, as always, your name prepared by, put your name there, and then the next line prepared on today's July 7th. Okay, and then the purpose statement. And as we talked about before, the purpose statement is designed to remind you and your user what the spreadsheet is about. And we're going to create like a bubble inside the spreadsheet that follows word processing rules so that you don't risk having a number erase part of your line. For example, I put a number in B1, it erases that heading. So if I create a merge cell and put it all in one cell, we don't have to worry about that disappearing. So this spreadsheet will prepare a monthly schedule of loan payments for a fixed interest rate loan that has a constant principal repayment. The interest charged each month and the total monthly payment are also shown. Alright, so there's your purpose line. Remember, you don't have to memorize mine. It just has to be close. Just has to convince me that you know what your spreadsheet actually does. So we click on A4, drag it out to G, so that should be the width of your paper. Okay, now lift off so that you have that all selected, and go to your alignment box. And remember, there's 4 things to do: merge, wrap, top align, and left align. And then we're going to adjust it. While I'm adjusting it, let me just show you the alignment. This is top alignment, middle, bottom. The reason why I'm fussy about the top alignment is that it preserves the line spacing in these first few lines, which makes it look better. Okay, so I'm going to click between the 4 and the 5 and push that line right up to the bottom there. And that's how to do that purpose. Okay, let's look at our test again. And it says provide a data section that includes the user data above. Okay, here's our user data. So we'll start with the section heading by skipping one blank line, bold and underline, and create a data section. Then we're going to select the entire row, A through G, and give it a color. Let's give it a light blue, and then give it a thick outside border. I'll show you the various options. Thick outside border. Okay, now the data section. On this kind of loan, you're typically dealing with a business that's buying some kind of asset. Unfortunately, banks, in their attempts to basically defraud homeowners, use the mortgage to hide the amount of interest you're paying. But businesses use these kinds of fixed principal loans. So we're going to have an asset price instead of a home price. We're going to have a down payment percentage. Down payment. And then this time we're going to have the the amount financed. Okay, the interest rate, which if you don't specify anything is always just assumed to be an annual interest rate. A loan period in years, and instead of a monthly payment that's fixed, in this case we're going to have a monthly principal contribution. And remember, your payments on a loan are principal plus interest. So in this loan, every month you're going to have a different payment amount, but you're going to be paying back the bank the same amount every month. All right, we're going to name the cells that we're going to use in the data section by selecting the column and cells with the title information and then going over one column, because we want to put the names onto one cell, not two. You can put cell names on ranges, which are more than one cell, so we have to be careful to only have two columns involved, one blank and one with a name. Okay, the shortcut was Control-Shift F3, if you remember that. Or you go to Formulas, Create from Selection. Okay, Excel automatically figures out that you're looking at the left column, so hit OK. And then we have to take those cells that we just gave names to, and we have to cut them, Control-X. You cannot use the copy command for this. You have to actually cut, and then go over to E and do Control-V to paste them. And then to double check, we want to look up here in the name box in the upper left. There's asset price, down payment percentage. So everything works just right. All right, so let's bring our numbers in. 168,000, 25%, interest rate 0.0485, 10-year loan period. Okay, all of our data section is going to be centered left to right. So we go back to the home ribbon and center a line, and now we're going to do currency for our asset price. But if you hold the control key down, I can click on more than one cell, and I can format them all at the same time. And the format I want for these dollars and cents is the currency format. Okay, so you can't see it, but when I put a number in these other cells, the formatting's already done. The down payment is a percentage. The interest rate is a percentage as well, but we have to add back 2 decimals so that we see the whole amount of the interest rate. Okay, we're going to put a background on these two that has the same color as the section bar to signal to the user that it's okay to change the numbers. Okay to change the numbers in those cells. All right, the down payment. The down payment is calculated exactly the same way as we did in the first project. We take the asset price and we multiply it times the down payment percentage. And again, you could type those words out or you can click on the cells. But this is your formula. And you see how it's already formatted. Amount financed is the asset price minus that down payment we just calculated. So you need to know those two. Okay, now the monthly principal contribution does not require the use of a function. This time we're just going to write an algebraic formula instead of using the payment function. And essentially all we're doing is we're going to take our loan and we're going to divide it by the number of months in the loan, so we're paying exactly the same amount every month. So we're going to take the loan period in years, multiply it times 12. Okay, just think of the pie. The amount that you pay yourself is the principal payment, and if you want to make sure that every payment has the same effect on your debt, then you divide that principal, which is the amount financed, into the number of months. So on this loan, every month we're paying ourselves back $1,050. Okay, so now we're going to do our answer section. I give you the column headings that you need, remind you to use a month 0. Okay, this is almost exactly like the last test. So we skip a line, call this the answer section, select the entire row A through G, give it its own color. Each section has its unique color. I'll make this green, and then wrap it. Okay, now our columns are given in the test. There's a month column, payment, interest, principal, and the loan balance. These are column headings. Column headings are bold, underlined, and centered. Okay, we need to have a month 0, and as you recall, we're going to have 360 months in case our loan period in years is 30. So I'm going to use the fill handle here and the autofill function of Excel to go down to 360. There we go. And remember, I want 360. I'm not talking about row 360. Rows over here on the side. I want there to be a month 360. Okay, and we need to have those centered so that they're right under the month. Okay, we need to pull in our basic number, which is the balance of the loan that we're going to show the schedule for. And we do that with a reference to amount financed. And remember, as soon as you see that in blue, I can hit the tab key and it comes right in. I want to make that a comma format. Alright, so now I go through and I'm going to do my formulas for the table. Let's start with the interest formula. Interest is always charged on the amount you owe the bank. We know we owe the bank $126,000, and so what I want to do is take the interest rate for a month, so I divide by 12, and multiply it times whatever is on the row above me, 2 columns to the right. Okay, and the way I do that is to click on it, and it gives me what's called an absolute, or sorry, not absolute. It gives me a relative reference. So whenever the interest formula comes along, if I copy that down, that F19 will change to F20 so that it always references the cell up 1 and over 2. So that's the interest I have to pay on $126,000 for having that money for a month. Okay, let's make interest a comma while we're at it. The principal that I'm going to pay back to the bank, I've determined. I'm not letting the bank play tricks on me. I'm just saying, hey, I'll pay you back the same amount every month. And that's the monthly principal contribution, so I can just copy that in. The reason I can use the name here is I always want it to point to the same cell. So I use the name. All right, my payment is not constant. My payment is just my interest plus my principal. Okay, so this is a little different than the first loan, but if you understand the interest and the principal, it shouldn't make any problem for you. So that's my payment. Okay, now my balance is going to change. I'm going to take the prior amount that I owe the bank, and I'm going to subtract the principal. I do not subtract the payment, because the payment includes interest that the bank has earned. The only thing that reduces my balance is a principal payment. All right, so there's my first line. In month 1, my payment is going to be $1,559.25. Of that, $509.25 is going to the bank as the bank's earnings and interest. $1,050 is going to reduce my debt. This is how businesses borrow money. Now I'm going to select all these cells, double click, and if I go to my 10th year, I should find my 0, my amortization. Okay, now we have a problem. You might have noticed this on the first Excel test, but we have a bunch of cells with information that we don't need. It's irrelevant. Everything below the 10th year is junk. Now I don't want to erase these cells because I may come along at a later time and I might say, what if I borrowed for 20 years? Well, now it's not junk until I get to 240. That's my payoff, and everything below it is junk. So what do we do? Well, one thing you can do is you can hide your cells. You can actually fold up the spreadsheet to hide everything after this 0. The way to hide cells is to click on the row reference. So I want row 140, and I'm going to go all the way down to 360. I can go past it, doesn't matter, and select the rows. And I did that by clicking on the row numbers on the left-hand side. Now when I right-click, I can go down, and there's a command that'll show up called hide. So I click on hide, everything's gone. So now I can go File, Print. Okay, I see my boxes are completely wrapped, so I'm not blowing through my margins. I see that I need a footer, so I'm going to go do the footer commands. Are you ready? Page layout, print titles, header footer, custom footer, and use the file path, which is the yellow folder icon there. Alright, so if we print preview it, we'll see it right there. But look at this. As soon as we get to 120, everything stops. We've managed to successfully hide all that junk. Now, if I want to unhide, I can go over to my, there's a faint double line there. If I select 139 to 381, or any number above the line to any number below the line, right-click, unhide, it's all unhidden. That's one way to do it. There's another way to do it, equally valid. You can use it if you want. Some people find it easier. Okay, and this way, you take, and instead of clicking on the row numbers, you just click on the cells that you don't want to see. So now I've selected all these cells, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Data, and I'm going to group the cells, and I'm going to group them by rows. As soon as I hit OK, a new column will appear on the left, and there'll be Screen Vision 1 and 2, and they'll give me an option. Do I want to see everything, or do I not want to see everything? That plus will add the cells, the minus will subtract them. Now, if I want to get rid of the grouping, it's a little more sensitive, but essentially I have to take the cells, make them open again, and I then have to group everything, including those cells again. So I go back up here all the way, go a little faster, okay, and then I go ungroup rows, and it goes back to normal. Okay, so let's get ready to finish the project, and to do that I'm going to use the hide unhide command to get back to my 0, which was right there at month 120. So I'm going to hide everything. Okay, now I'm going to look at my output. So File, Print. I have my whole row, or sorry, my column there. I haven't cut it off, and my print has footers on it, and it ends at 120. So that's where we want to be. Okay, I keep telling you to follow directions, and then I forgot one, and that is to double check that your column E is wide enough. So if we put 10 million there, you can see right away we've got problems with the E and the F. Okay, so you remember how to adjust. You put the cursor between the two columns, click, widen it out a bit, good. Widen the F out a bit, good. Now you see how our page break has taken G, so we're going to shrink A just a bit, and that did the trick. Now we've got everything spaced right, and we're going to put our number back just as we found it, 168,000, and we've complied with that 10 million rule. All right, that's the end of the regular part of the test. There is extra credit available on this test. Now, you don't have to do the extra credit, but if you do, you can earn some extra points. In this case, by putting a spin control to the right of the interest rate. Spinner buttons are useful when you're doing financial work because you can make changes to numbers just by clicking on a button. Now, in order to get extra credit, you have to do much more than just get the spinner button. You have to follow a set of directions. So I'm going to model those for you now. If you have no intention of getting the extra credit, you're done. But if you want to get the extra credit, the first thing you're going to do is take rows 8 through 14. So 8 through 14. I'm selecting by clicking and dragging on the row numbers. Right click, change the row height. Okay, this shows up where you saw column width before. So change the row height from the default of 15 to 25. Okay, you can see that your rows are wider now, but the default is to put things at the bottom of the cell, which puts your numbers at the bottom of the boxes they're supposed to be in. That's lopsided. So before you unselect, go up to your top, middle, and bottom alignment and click on Middle Alignment. Okay, we want this to be in the middle here. All right, we're not talking about centering the titles. The titles are fine left to right, but we want them to center in the middle of the box. That way the title lines up with the number and the number lines up in the box. Now you have to turn on the developer ribbon. You can see I have developer tab, but you probably will not on your computer. So to turn on the developer ribbon, you go to the File menu, Options, Customize Ribbon, and right down here is the developer. Okay, mine's checked already because I use it all the time, but this is where the Excel developers have hidden some of the more powerful controls. So you need to check that box, and then once you have your developer tab, select developer, go to the Insert toolbox, fourth from the top, the Form control. If I hover over it, that's the Spin button. Now there's a Spin button down here in the ActiveX controls, but you don't want these. These have to do with web pages. You want the top control, the Spin button. So I click it, and my cursor turns into a little target X. I'm going to put that right up here on the upper right corner of interest rate and drag across to the right, and that's where my button's going to be. Now, these buttons around, or these circles around the edge are for editing. If I want, I could make this ridiculous, but I don't want it that big. I want you to keep it right down to about half the width of that cell. Okay, there's our button. We're going to use the button to change the number. But before I do that, I'm going to take the cell that the button's on top of, and I'm going to name it Spinner. Okay, remember how to name. You just type Spinner, hit Enter, and then that cell is no longer F12, it's now Spinner. Then we're going to go into the interest rate. It's no longer a cell that the user just puts a number in. I'm going to put a formula here. I'm going to say, take whatever's in the spinner box and divide it by 100,000. Now that I have a formula, I have to remove the color. So I go Home and No Fill. Then finally I have to tell the button what to do. So I go to Format Control by right-clicking on the button. Sometimes it's tricky. So you right-click on the button, Format Control. And the most important control is the link. What is that button controlling? So right here, I'm just going to link that by clicking on that cell. Okay, I could also type equals spinner there. The object is to tell it it's controlling F12. Now every time I hit that button, I want the interest rate to change by 0.05%. So I'm going to put 50 here as the incremental change. That means each time I click the button, that number in F12 will go up by 50. And whatever's in F12 is going to be used in this formula, divided by 100,000 and formatted as a percent. So when I click that, I see the numbers changing, and you can see that this 350 is the result of clicking, and I'm just going to go up to 4.85. And as a last matter, when you're really good at Excel, you want to hide your tracks. And there's two ways to hide what we're doing here. The first is to take the spinner cell and align it to the left, and that puts the number behind the button, so nobody can see what you're doing. Still works. The other way to do it would be to take that cell and define the font as white, and there you don't see it. Okay, so those are the steps that you need to take in order to get the full extra credit on number 2. Look forward to working with you on pivot tables.